Today I'm going to show you a test that you can do to test your hips for impingement, and then I'm going to show you some of the best exercises. What's going on, guys? Blake Bowman here, GuerrillaZen Fitness. Hip impingement is a very common cause of hip discomfort, equally as common as shoulder impingement is, and impingement in general is characterized by things like, tendons and nerves getting literally pinched by surrounding structures. Hip impingement can make things like squats and deadlifts really, really tricky. You might feel kind of a pinching sensation at the bottom of a squat. A test for this, which is very commonly used and one that you can easily do at home, is called the FADIR test, which is an acronym for flexion, adduction, internal rotation. Okay? That's a fancy way of saying, basically, lay on your back, flex the hip by pulling it in to approximately 90 degrees here, adduct it by pulling it towards the midline a little bit, okay? And then internally rotate it. Bring the heel out away from the body in this position like this. You might want to have somebody passively do this for you. So again, it's flexion, pull it in, okay? Bring it in a little bit this way, kind of towards the groin, and then internally rotate it by taking that foot out this way. If you find that FADIR test kind of flares up the hip joint, there is a very high likelihood that you may be dealing with impingement. Remember, this is not medical advice. If you did this to yourself and you suspect you might have this going on, always make sure to consult with your doctor. Just like other joints, including the shoulder, what's going on with the hip is largely going to be determined by the muscular balance that you have around the hip. Which muscles are tight, which muscles are weak. The joint alignment and the centration of it, which is basically where the femur is positioned within the joint socket. And the mobility of the hip. All of these things together are going to majorly either predispose your hip to injury or allow your hip to function well into old age with a much less likely chance of injury. The first couple exercises that I'm going to show you for the hip are going to involve helping to restore some of the mobility that you might have lost there. All you need to do this is a fat resistance band, something that, and a stable structure, something that you can tie it around. If you have a big resistance band and a stable structure, then you can do these following hip mobilizations. All right, so banded hip flexion. This is the first of the mobilizations I'll show you. Tie a very heavy-duty resistance band around something stable. Pull that thing up your femur, all the way up into your groin as high as you can, and then get down on your hands and knees, quadruped position. And then simply just rock back and forth into deep hip flexion here. What this is doing, the band is actually holding the femur in the center of the joint socket here, as long as there's tension on the band, which is improving that joint centration, allowing you to work on flexion. So do this for anywhere between 1 and 20 reps. All right, so now we got some banded hip distractions, mobilizations that are going to help with rotation. Put that resistance band up into your groin again, as high up on the femur as possible. Get in this position, and then work on internally rotating the femur like this. Use your arm to help assist that knee inwards towards the midline here, okay? Try to scissor in and out of end range of motion. Try to go a little bit deeper each rep. Now we're going to go to the outside, external rotation, okay? Don't be afraid to roll up onto the outside of that foot. Really squeeze the glute on the leg that you're doing this on too. About 2 sets of 10 to 15 each direction. So both of those are great at increasing the mobility of the hips, okay? Creating some space in the joint for the femur to rotate around. And, this is really important to do. Most people that have this going on to a degree are missing some sort of rotation in the hips. If you want to see a video where I actually teach you a test to assess your hip mobility, then click this up here and check the link in the description down below to another hip video that I made about assessing the hips. So those are likely some of the best things that you can be doing for the hip in terms of mobility. Now let's kind of shift our focus and start talking about the muscle imbalances present in the hip. There's one really important thing that I want you to understand. The gluteus maximus and its role in hip function, okay? The gluteus maximus basically holds the femur within the proper position in the joint socket when it's strong, okay? If this is the joint socket of the hip and this is the head of the femur, you want optimal centration, okay? And that means that the head of the leg bone, the top of your leg bone, the femur, is positioned within the center of the joint socket, okay? When it's positioned in the center, you can do all sorts of motions with the hips just fine, all right? The glutes back here are doing their job of holding that hip in, proper centration. When they become weak, the femoral head starts to glide forwards like this, and that can open you up and kind of start the process of impingement, all right? So having stronger glutes pulls that femoral head and helps to maintain it within the center of the joint socket, which is where we want it to be. So one of the biggest things that you can be doing to prevent hip impingement is strengthening the gluteus maximus. To do that, we want to be doing the gold standard gluteus maximus strength training exercise, which is going to be a barbell hip thruster. All right, so the gold standard hip thruster here, this is the best exercise to build up the glutes. Put your back on the bench, begin with your butt seated on the ground, pull the barbell onto your hips, and thrust the hips up. Keep the whole spine neutral here, meaning you want the back to be straight, okay? And you want to be looking at your knees the whole time too. Squeezing the glutes at the top of the motion. This is the best exercise that you can be doing to build up your gluteus maximus. Make sure that you're doing hip thrusters as a regular part of your strength training routine. It goes a really long way in helping to prevent hip issues, and the glutes are actually very important postural muscles as well. There's many benefits to strengthening them and maintaining strength in them. The last thing that I want to talk about in this video today is something called synergistic dominance of the hamstrings and how this may actually predispose your hip to developing impingement, okay? What does synergistic dominance of the hamstrings mean? Well, it means that the hamstring muscles, okay, which are supposed to be synergist muscles to the gluteus maximus to produce hip extension, which means taking the leg back, it means that they are supposed to be synergist muscles with the glutes, helping them out. But when they're synergistically dominant, they kind of overpower the glutes, they dominate the glutes, and do all the work instead of the glutes, okay? You might know that you have this going on if when you do hip thrusters, all that you can feel firing are the back of your thighs, the hamstrings, and your butt muscles just kind of remain dormant. Maybe the next day after doing hip thrusters, you're really sore in the hamstrings and not the glutes. These are kind of all signs that you might have this going on. And this is a problem, okay? This is a problem for multiple reasons. One, by you trying to strengthen your glutes, which we need to be doing to optimize that hip centration, if you're actually, activating the hamstrings, then the hamstrings are going to get stronger, and the stronger they get, the more synergistically dominant over the glutes they become. The second big problem with this is when the hamstrings fire to extend the hip instead of the glutes, what happens is the femur tends to glide forwards more, okay? Shirley Sarman, who's kind of a, mentor of mine, I've never met her, but I've read her books. She describes this in her book, okay? When the femurs basically are shifting forwards like that, that can just, set you up again for impingement. What we want to be doing is maintaining that optimal joint centration. We want that femoral head to stay right in the center of the joint socket. And when those hamstrings are firing more than the glutes, all that you need to understand is that that sends the femoral head forwards, okay? Which we do not want to be occurring. That all begs the question, what can you be doing then to address that, right? If you're feeling your hamstrings work too much when you're doing hip thrusters, what can you do about it? Hip thrusters are the best exercise to build up the glutes. Your hamstrings are taking over. How do you address that? Well, the best way that I found to do this is by incorporating something in between your sets called interset self-myofascial release, okay? Inter just means in between. Interset means in between sets. Self-myofascial release is self-massage, okay? What you want to be doing if you have this synergistic dominance of the hamstrings going on is rolling out the hamstring in between sets of hip thrusters, okay? What that can do is it'll help to shut down the neurological drive going into the hamstrings, telling them to turn on and contract. It'll temporarily inhibit them, which kind of opens up a window of opportunity for you to start to get your glutes to contract and turn on and activate. All right, so one of the best ways that you can address synergistic dominance of the hamstrings is do interset self-myofascial release. One of my favorite ways to do this is to get a small 10-pound kettlebell or a massage ball, place it underneath the hamstring, and sandwich the ball or the kettlebell between your hamstring and a bench. Extend and flex the knee like this, work the entire vertical length of the hamstring, and do this in between sets of hip thrusters. What this will do is it'll inhibit the hamstrings from firing, downregulate that neurological drive, and shut them down a little bit, which will encourage the hamstrings to actually contract and begin the process of getting them stronger. That's a big secret and something that will really help you out. I don't see enough people talking about this synergistic dominance of the hamstrings, but it's very, very common, and in a roundabout way, it can contribute to hip issues due to what I just described a moment ago. That's it for today's video. I hope these ideas and concepts really help you out. If you enjoyed this video, then you're really gonna like my free workout plan, okay? This is called the 3-day functional training split. It's a free workout designed to improve muscular balance, posture, common mobility issues, and flexibility issues while getting you stronger and leaner at the same time. It's free, it's on my website. All you need to do is open up the description down below, click the first link available there. That will take you over to my website. As soon as you get there, I'll ask you for your email, and then I'll send you a copy of this guide within 5 minutes. If you're looking for another spot to get that free workout, you can go ahead and click up here. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, do that over here. If you want to see another video similar to today's video, check this out over here. That's that hip video I was talking about earlier. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you go ahead and do that down below. Click that notification bell. I'm trying to upload here every week to every 2 weeks. So subscribe if you haven't yet. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you want me to make videos on in the future. And that's it for today. See you next time.